Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to our workshops on a Friday morning. And I think, like me, most of you sort of find it to be a little bit of a highlight for our Friday and to get us going for our winter tasks or our tasks in the garden over the weekend. And today we are chatting about what to do in your garden for winter, how you can prepare your garden for the winter, and all the things around that. And again, thank you very much, Kay. Kay has done a very beautiful PowerPoint presentation for us. It always looks fantastic, so thank you very much, Kay. And without further ado, I am going to share the PowerPoint with you. For those of you who don't know, my name is Sue. I'm your garden guru from GardenShop, and I'm here to answer your questions. If you've got any, you can always email me, or you can give me a call here at the office, and I would be quite glad to speak to you. So let's go to our PowerPoint presentation for this week. And as I said, oh, wait a minute, I've got to actually share this with you. I forgot to. Let me do that if I can find it. There it goes. Share. And you should all have that on your screen now. And then let me just minimize. Where is my sheet screen now? There it is. And let me go there. Right, so as I said, we're talking about winter gardening today and what to do in your garden, especially those things that you need to consider to prevent your plants from getting killed by the winter frost and all the cold that we might be expecting. I don't know, for me, the winter has been quite late. Usually by now, all the trees would have dropped all the leaves and it would be quite bare. But as yet, I think it's not that cold yet. And I see there's still a lot of trees out there that's actually only starting to turn the color in their leaves. So I really don't know what to expect of this winter. I don't know if any one of you were bold enough last Saturday to do the worldwide naked gardening day, but for me Saturday was a bit frosty to venture out into my garden in my birthday suit. So be it. Maybe we should have our own naked gardening day here in South Africa when the weather is better for us. So winter's here and it's coming on strong, I think. And as I said, I don't know if it's going to be a long winter, a short winter, a cold winter, a not so cold winter. But I usually actually wish that it is quite a cold winter. Firstly, because, you know, if you've got a good cold winter, it gets rid of a lot of the pests and things that you would get early on in the season. And, you know, that really helps with your pest control and that later in the season. But just the mere fact that it's winter doesn't mean that you've got to down your gardening tools, because in South Africa, we're fortunate. We usually have sunny days in the winter. It gets colder at night, and yeah, we might have a few like really frosty days, but then I suppose you can do your indoor gardening and your house plants. So yes, winter gardening in South Africa is entirely possible, and you wouldn't want to stop your exercising your green finger just because it's cooler in these months. So I'm going to give you a few tips on winter gardening today. And contrary to popular belief, there's very many plants and vegetables that actually thrive this time of year. Some plants like cyclamens, for instance, really likes this cold weather. It actually helps them to produce flowers. things like your vegetables, like your lettuces and your cabbages, they actually prefer winter. They don't seed as quickly. If you plant cabbages, say for instance in summer, you'll find that they seed before they make heads. So winter is usually a good time to plant your leafy vegetables like your cabbages, everything from the cabbage family, Brussels sprouts, the lot. I don't plant Brussels sprouts because I don't eat them. I do cook it for my family though, but then I just buy them. I can plant nicer stuff there in those spaces. Winter also offers you a chance to take a nice look at your garden because it's a bit more empty now, and you can do things in order to improve your garden and to change its structure if needs be. Now, every gardener knows that under the cloak of winter lies a miracle. So what is winter, and what is it about winter that sort of gets to our plants mostly? And yeah, I'm going to give to you a few tips on how to beat the freeze. But first of all, I would just like to explain to you the difference between frost and black frost, because I think there's a lot of confusion often about that. So if we think of normal frost, we might as well think of dew. So what happens is the moisture in the air is basically condensing against the plant leaves, and then when the temperature at night drops below 0 degrees Celsius, those little droplets that's condensed against the leaf will then freeze. So in actual fact, it's basically sort of a frost layer that's lying on the outside of the leaves. And that is what we call normal frost. But then we also get black frost, and I think that is the thing that most gardeners fear. So black frost is entirely something different. Inside your plant, you've got plant cells. And as we know, if you put a Coke can into your freezer, for instance, for a few hours, that Coke can is going to expand, and it might even sort of crack open or burst open, because when water freezes, it expands. And that is exactly the same what that happens to plants when we get black frost. Because plant cells consist of about 95% water, if it gets very cold and the prevailing wind is very cold, the water inside those cells start to freeze, and then when it expands, it actually breaks the membrane of those cells, basically killing off the actual plant cells. And that is why the moment that then sort of gets warmer in the morning, we will see all that black stuff in our garden. It's because those cells have then expanded and broken. Now, sometimes black frost could kill things. Other plants that's more hardy will shoot again from the bottom. So that all depends on what type of plant you've got, how well they would be able to endure the black frost. Now, what can we do? How does frost affect plants? There's mostly three ways how frost affects the plant. A tropical plant, for instance, because a tropical plant contains a lot of water mostly, will die. And that's also nature's way of sort of weeding out the stuff that doesn't naturally grow in an area. So say, for instance, you're living out in the Drakensberg and you're planting tropical banana trees there, they will definitely not survive a winter there. Some plants actually die when they get frosted, and they will regrow in spring. And that's also one of nature's way to actually sort of prune plants in a way, because some plants are meant to sort of grow back from the bottom again, sort of preventing old woody growth and things like that. Now, more resilient plants, they might shed a few damaged leaves, and it is very important, if leaves are damaged because of frost, because of cold, that you should leave it until spring. Those leaves act like a little blanket, sort of protecting the rest of the plant then from the cold that is in the air. So what can we do to beat the freeze? First of all, if you've got very sensitive plants, the best thing is to cover them up. If you live in a frost-prone area, and I think we do, although I must say the last few years we actually haven't had that much frost here in Gauteng and Johannesburg area. I remember as a kid when I grew up in Alberton, we couldn't wait in the morning to get to school because there would be frost all over the rugby field and playing field. And in those days we had those sort of school shoes that were sort of, didn't have a tread on it, and then we would slide across the rugby field as if it was a skating rink. So that was obviously not permitted, but we did do it anyways. But yes, of late, you know, I haven't seen frost to that extent here in Gauteng, and it often happens nowadays that we might only see frost like a few days during the winter, instead of like the entire winter. But if you've got very sensitive plants, I'm talking those tropical plants, as I said, banana trees, and all the other things that's very cold sensitive, it is good to cover them. You get special frost cover, which you can buy here at the nursery. It's sort of a lightweight sort of fabric, and that sort of keeps out the wind. If you are using frost cover, some people keep it over for the whole season, but if at all possible, I would say that you should put your frost cover on at about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and try to remove it the next day by about 9 o'clock, so that plant can then get a bit of sun and sort of help it through the winter. You can also use cardboard. You can use wigwams. I remember my grandmother, she used to like take straw and make it into like wigwams, and she used to cover the sensitive stuff in winter with those things. You can use grass, anything that would protect your plant. For bigger, sort of sturdier things, you can also use hessian, which is also available at the nursery, and also I think at most of your sort of haberdashery fabric type places. Now the next thing you should do is to feed, because you need to feed your whole garden with an organic fertilizer to strengthen the cell walls in the plants. And you'll see later on, we're going to come to a slide where I say don't feed, but I'm also going to explain to you what type of fertilizer you are not supposed to then use. So the fertilizers that we want to use this time of year, as I say, an organic fertilizer, because you want your potassium and your phosphates to be strong, or a high content of phosphates and potassium, which are the elements that actually strengthens your cell walls in the plant, that makes it more sort of stretchable if the water in the cells then try to expand, and also then your root fertilizers, because even though the plant is dormant on top of the soil in winter, it doesn't mean that it's not working underground. Now, the next thing is to check your watering. Now, conscientious gardeners will stop watering in the evening and adjust the irrigation systems to a winter setting. And what is a winter setting, you might ask? Well, for me, I think first of all, you don't want to water too early in the morning, because the cold air can then again sort of freeze the water that's on the plant. And also, you don't want to do it late in the afternoon. So I would say ideally water wintering should take place between 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Also reduce the frequency of your watering. You do not want too much water inside those plant cells. And that gives the water that's in the plant cells space to actually expand in without breaking the cell walls. So remember, the whole metabolism of the plant is also slowing down. So your watering should really be a lot less frequent. I've got some herbs outside in pots, and even now I can see where I would, in summertime, water those pots every second day. Now I can get by with only watering them once a week. So look at your watering schedule, look at the type of plants that you've got, and adjust your watering cycle for winter accordingly. Now, another way to beat the freeze is to avoid pruning of frost-sensitive plants. Even if they get damaged by frost, leave the damaged material on until such time that it gets warmer, because it protects the rest of the plant from the cold. The other thing is, if you prune too early, like say for instance you pruning your rose bushes too early, you might get a few warm days and then the plant thinks that it's spring and it might start making new shoots, and those new shoots are not so robust yet. They're little baby shoots and they will get damaged if you get frost again. So avoid pruning sensitive plants first of all, and secondly, also don't do your winter pruning too early. That should only be done at the end of winter when you are sure that the worst of the cold is over and that your new growth on your plant won't get damaged. Also avoid pruning frost damaged plants, and I think I've just mentioned that too, because the leaves and things around the plant, even though they've been damaged, are protecting the roots and what's left of the plant from the cold. It's acting as a mini greenhouse or a blanket or whatever you want to call it, but don't cut them back until such time that you get or that you sort of sure that it's not going to get very cold again. And cutting back things also encourages growth, which you don't want this time of year. You don't want any top growth, really, because those things are all sensitive buds and shoots, and they might not survive the cold. If you've got plants that's in pots, that's sensitive plants, place it in a corner, even if it doesn't have that much sunlight, where it's protected from the wind, especially because the wind is what brings around the black frost. Or put them against walls. If you plant things that are sensitive to too cold, maybe make sure that you plant them initially in your garden in a place where it's also protected. As I say, against hedging, walls, corners, little courtyards, etc. Those are all good places to put your sensitive plants. Now, here's a very important thing, and that's mulching. And mulching your plants is extremely important. Not only is the mulch going to protect the plant roots and the bottoms and growth tips of the plants from the frost. But in fact, the mulch also generates heat, like a compost heap would generate heat, because the mulch on top of the soil is slowly going to start to decompose, and that, as I say, generates heat, and that heat sort of penetrates into the upper layer of the soil, and even the upper layer, say 10-15 centimeters above the soil. So again, the mulching has a twofold function when it comes to beating the freeze. Now, other things that you can do in winter, apart from trying to protect your plants from cold and frost and saving everything, is once all the leaves and things have fallen off your garden and, you know, things are a bit more empty, and that you can actually rethink and improve your layout. Look at your garden, see where you can do some adjustments. Maybe you want to bring in some layering, some paving. Maybe you want to create a new focal point. And this is a very good time of the year to actually sort of plan those things. And if you need to do any hard landscaping, do that while the plants aren't actively growing. So yes, this time of year, if you've got nothing else to do in your garden, rethink it, don't entirely redesign it, but add things and see how you can make your garden more functional. Now, you might think that this time of the year there's no nasty pests and diseases, and there is indeed far less pests and diseases. Like, you'll hardly see any fungal infections in winter because it's too cold for fungi. They need like sort of moist, humid conditions, warmish conditions to actually sort of spread. So you won't find much fungal diseases. A lot of the insects would be in hibernation as well, but there are a few critters that's around that is really nasty little things. And I'm thinking here of that Italian Conifer Aphid. And very interesting about that aphid is it damages your conifer trees, and it's really it's limited to conifers, really. So anything from the cypress, coniferous genuses of plants, they would attack them. Some of them even more so than others, like your Cupressus genus, your goldcrest, and that they absolutely love those things. Now, the conifer aphid is a very, very small insect, and you can actually hardly see it. You can see on that little photograph at the bottom there, those are the leaves, the small little like scaly leaves on a conifer. So you can see how small that insect really, really is. It's like nearly microscopically small. So what this insect does is that it like sucks out the juices from the plant, and it then damages the conifer from the inside, because it usually sits on the inside where it's also a bit protected from the cold. Now, you won't see those insects, and in winter the plant is not growing, so you're not going to see any damage. But by the time spring comes and the plant starts growing out again, then you're going to see the damage that these insects have done. And then by that time, they're gone, and they're only going to be back next April. So what do? Even though you don't see those insects, you know that they're going to do the damage now in winter. So treat your conifers with a systemic insecticide. Now, systemic insecticide gets absorbed by the plant, it spreads on the inside of the plant, and then when that aphid sucks or bites on it, the insect would die. So treat your conifers preventatively. Don't wait until you see the damage in spring, because as I say, by then those insects are gone. And what's more is the damage that this insect does on a tree in winter is more than what the plant can actually recover in summer. So it's degenerative. So after a few years, your tree would then virtually just be dead. Winter is also a great time to move deciduous trees and shrubs because they don't have any leaves on it, and they have less moisture loss. And as I've said too, your root growth takes place in winter, so that gives the plant that you're transplanting or moving a chance to re-establish its root system, so that by the time spring comes, it can put all its energy into its top growth. If you are moving plants, use some good compost to plant it with. Also some 315 fertilizer, which is a slow release, which will help those roots to develop. And then put a mulch layer around the area where you have transplanted the shrub or tree to. Now, said previously, don't prune, but there is also cases now in winter when you should actually be pruning, like for instance your deciduous trees and shrubs. You can now see where there's dead branches and dead twigs. Cut all of that stuff out, but don't do your let's say your spring prune now. But it's a good time to actually see where all those damaged and diseased material is, and you can cut that out. Cut out big branches on trees that you don't want them, well, and or lift the canopies of trees. It's also a very good time to prune your evergreen hedging, especially because the evergreen hedging is not going to grow much now in winter. So in the beginning of winter, you can just like style them nicely, and it should not be a problem then for the rest of the entire winter until they start growing again. So those are for your evergreen topiaries and hedges and shrubs. Then winter is a fantastic time to plant roses. As I've said previously, your root growth takes place in winter. If you plant your roses now, your roses are deciduous, they don't have leaves this time of year. All the energy can go into the bottom growth, which is the root growth of the rose, and you will have a well-established plant by the time spring comes. That doesn't only go for roses, it also goes for deciduous shrubs, things like mayflowers and that, for instance. When you are planting your roses, again, use a good fertilizer like 1-3-1-5, and then you can use rose planting mix, which is a rose compost when you are planting. It's also a fantastic time to plant fruit trees, and fruit trees, I mean your deciduous fruit trees, not your evergreens like avocado and stuff like that, but all your prunes, peaches, apples, pears. They actually like the winter season. Again, root growth takes place in winter, so by the time spring comes, the plant can really put all its energy into the top growth, and you've got well-established plants. You can also plant and feed your winter annuals. Remember, your metabolism on your plants are lower in winter, and so if you do plant winter annuals, do feed them regularly too, and use a fertilizer that's got a high flower element in it. Something like multi-feed flower grow is absolutely fantastic, and that would also make those plants, even though they winter plants, more robust to survive very cold conditions. And I think we have previously sort of spoken about those things that has to go into your garden, the color that goes into your garden in winter. but just to name a few, your stocks, your Iceland poppies, all of those things, violas, pansies, foxgloves, snapdragons, bellaspirinas, sweet williams, primulas, all the primula varieties. So plant them in your beds, in your containers, in your hanging baskets, so that you can bring a bit of sprightly color to your winter garden. Now, another important thing is, and I think we often forget this, is to actually feed your spring flowering perennials, things like your clivias, for instance. And I'm even thinking of spring flowering shrubs, like your mayflowers, like wisterias, ornamental quinces, all those type of things. You need to feed them now so that they can actually produce those buds that will then start flowering early spring. And then also on that topic, remember there's some spring flowering plants that really need a bit of special TLC. And here I'm talking about your acid-loving spring flowering plants. And I'm mostly thinking of your camellias and your azaleas, which makes a terrific show in early spring. And remember, those buds are already sitting probably on your plants even now, and they will only open in spring. Remember, your azaleas and camellias, they need a low pH, an acidic pH, in order to flower well, in order to grow well, and to prevent them from becoming chlorotic. So what do? Keep on feeding them with Wonder Shake and Grow, the blue hydrangea food, once a month. It's an easy to use product. You sprinkle it around the roots and you water it in. And then it's also a very good time now to add a layer of acid compost around those plants as a mulch layer. If you've got them in pots, obviously that's going to be a bit more difficult. And then this is just like a little tip as well. Add some pine needles over the soil area as well. Don't work it into the soil. On top of the soil, like a blanket, like a mulch layer, because the pine needles also help to maintain that acidity in the soil. Now, last of all, your indoor plants, if you've got indoor plants and they're close to windows, especially windows that don't get that much sun, move them away from the windows, and put them in warmer areas in your house where there's still enough light. Once the cold is gone, then you can move them back into those cold windowsills, and they will be perfectly fine. And then again, remember, and I've said so many times, plants in pots need to be fertilized frequently because they cannot go and look for food. You've got to take the food to them. So give them good organic food like nitrosol and liquid food, which has got everything in that they do need. Also remember that heaters and fireplaces will dry out the air in the house. So you might find that unlike your outdoor plants, your plants indoors might need a little bit more water. But winter is a time of rest, and winter serves a purpose. It's a time when nature rests, but it's not stagnant. And just because it's a subtle thing, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening at all. As I've just explained to you, a lot of stuff actually do happen in winter, especially root growth that takes place in winter. So the purposes of winter is when it rests. I don't know why this slide is the same slide. And you must remember, winter gives birth to the buds of spring and the glory of summer. And you can't use all that energy that's being used in springtime to give us that abundance of spring, that energy needs to be stored up in winter. Now, the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. So, you know, in your garden, you don't need to be in a hurry. Everything will be accomplished in due time. So that's my few little tips on winter gardening. And I would just like to share with you our upcoming courses and workshops. Our vegetable gardening workshop, which is on the 22nd of May. It's a Saturday morning at our Bryanston branch. And yes, it's going to be a lovely workshop. Mayford is like sponsoring little sort of gift packs for us and everything like that. So I've only got 2 places left for that workshop. If anybody is interested in that, please send me an email ASAP, because as I say, I can only accommodate 20 people. So let me know. And then on the 5th of June, we've got a very exciting workshop on organic gardening. That's on the 5th of June. That is also a Saturday at our Bryanston branch. And then watch out, watch our mailers and that, because we will soon be announcing the dates for our online gardeners course. So if you're interested in attending that, again, you can give me a shout, and we will soon, sort of, as I say, release the dates. So last week we were talking about guerrilla gardening, and I must just say to you, I had some lovely emails from everybody, but one lady in specific, I think it was Joan. Anyway, Joan wrote me a lovely letter saying that her husband is actually like one of these very wanted guerrilla gardeners, and he's taken over the whole sidewalk, the sidewalk across the road from him, and plus he's also even gardening on the vacant plot next to them. And he's doing all sorts of things, and apparently he's been at this for quite a few years, it sounds like. And he's just expanding his green wings all over the place. And then as a last PS on her note, she said, by the way, my husband is 76 years old. So you're never too old or too young to get involved in guerrilla gardening. But I've got Doris here with me, as usual. Let me just, Doris, I'm just trying to find where our expansion thingy is. Aha. Doris, I think you need to move in a bit here. Rightio.
They can see me.
Yeah, I think we can see you. You can move in a little bit too, still. Or maybe a bit forward. Yes, yes, you see, there you are. Yeah. So we've got our draw for our guerrilla gardening competition. And I must just say to you, Green Line, while Doris is shaking that, sponsored us 6 packs of succulents. Excellent for guerrilla gardening. All different types of sedums. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of sedums. So one lucky guerrilla gardener is going to get 20 of these 6 packs. It's like all the way behind me here, to go and put into your guerrilla garden. Are you ready, Doris?
Ready. There you are.
Okay, and our lucky winner today is Monica Heyer. Congratulations. Monica says the answer to the question is guerrilla gardening is taking a patch of neglected or bedraggled public land to make it beautiful using flowers, vegetables, and fruit. I guerrilla garden on my pavement and in my backyard. So congratulations, Monica. You're going to have some plants there to guerrilla garden on your pavement. and your backyard. And I think most of these are actually indigenous as well, so they are going to be great for your guerrilla gardening. I'll give you a shout, and we will get hold of you. I see your closest branch is Bryanston, so we'll get that to you. Doris, why are you moving away?
No,
Are you scared?
No, I wanted them to see all these gorillas. They look so beautiful.
They are beautiful. Look at his son there behind us, here on the side here. So, for those of you who didn't win the guerrilla gardening competition, luckily we've got another competition today. Also, Doris, if you want to hand me that, RJE there at the back there. No, yeah. RJE has sponsored a little competition for us for today, and our question today is, how can you protect your plants from frost? And we've got a little hamper here. RJE has just released a new sort of range of pots, UV protected, whatnot, imported, recycled material, and all of those type of things. These are from the supplier Seaboard, so they sponsored that with us, for us, along with a 3 by 5 meter frost cover blanket for your frost sensitive plants. So if you want to enter today's competition, send me an email at subi@gardenshop.co.za, and the question today is quite easy. How can you protect your plants against frost? So send your answer to me at subi@gardenshop.co.za, and you will get into the draw for tomorrow. Not tomorrow, next week Friday. And by the way, next week Friday we're starting to speak about herbs, and we're going to do 3 workshops on herbs. Next week workshop would entail how do you plan your herb garden, what do you put into it, etc., etc. So that's next week's workshop for you. And then just our last thought here, a final word. You know, I always try to find something humorous for you at the end of the presentations. And this young gentleman here, it seems he loves his tree more than he loves his wife, because he took his wife's best coat to protect the tree against frost. Well, that is all from me then today. I'm Sue, I'm your garden guru from GardenShop. Doris, that's always assisting me, and she's the lady who answers the phone here at Central Office, always very helpful. So you can give us a call at 011 465 6485. If Doris can't help you, she will always take a message and send it through to me if I'm not here. You always do, Doris.
Yeah,
You send me an email. You can also send me an email. My email address, subi@gardenshop.co.za, and that's the same email address that you use for our competition. And from me, stay safe, keep gardening, and I'll see you next week. In the meantime, you can visit our branches at Broadacres, Parktown North, GardenShop Bryanston, and remember, we've got our garden gurus in those stores, and they will be able to help you with all your questions too. Thank you very much for joining us here today. I hope it doesn't get too cold too soon. Have a good weekend. See you next week.